On April 22, 2024 at 9:35 a.m., a 911 dispatcher answered a chilling 911 call. A boy just 10 years old, his voice trembling as he delivered a horrifying statement. His parents and 3 older brothers were dead. Police arrived at a home on Mirage Street to witness a scene that would leave them in disbelief. 5 members of the Candy family were lying on the floor, each victim of gunfire. The father, 42-year-old Jonathan Candy, was among the dead, but the investigation revealed something even more horrifying. Jonathan was the one who had pulled the trigger. Hi there, I'm Mark, and welcome to True Crime Stories today. We're examining the case of the Candy family, where investigators were left with chilling questions that refused to be answered. Why would Jonathan mercilessly murder his wife and 3 children, yet spare the life of his youngest son? The deeper they dug, the more baffling it became. There were no signs of domestic violence, no hidden feuds, no clues to explain this unimaginable horror. What could drive a man to such an unthinkable act? Let's take a look. The Candy family was a model American family living in Yukon, Oklahoma. It included 42-year-old Jonathan Candy, his 39-year-old wife, Lindsay Terry Candy, and their 4 sons: 18-year-old Dylan Candy, 14-year-old Ethan Candy, 12-year-old Lucas Candy, and their youngest son, who was 10 years old. Jonathan Candy was a fun-loving guy who was a part-time worker at a Paycom center, which regularly hosted major sporting and entertainment events and was the venue of the home games of the Oklahoma City Thunder. One of the family friends and Ethan's basketball coach, TJ Armstrong, told the media that Jonathan was a great guy who always thanked others for everything and gave hugs. He said that the Candy family was a beautiful family with amazing souls and should only be remembered in good memories. Just like her husband, Lindsay Candy was also an entertaining person who knew how to meet people and keep the room's atmosphere lively. The same had been transferred to their children as well, who were just like their parents. It was because of their friendly and entertaining personalities that the Candy family was a favorite among friends, neighbors, and relatives. According to her Facebook and her childhood friend, Cammie Cruz, Lindsay was born and grew up in Prague, Oklahoma, and later moved to Yukon. Dylan Candy, the eldest son of the Candys, had recently graduated from Mustang High School in Yukon and was attending Oklahoma Baptist University. For higher studies, Dylan had a passion for music and loved learning and playing different instruments. While at Mustang High, Dylan was a drummer in his school band. This love for music continued into university as well, where he was a member of the Bison Brigade. According to Dylan's teachers and friends at both school and college, he had a heart and was always willing to help others. The Candy family was full of talent, and the second child, the 14-year-old Ethan Candy, played baseball for Mustang North High School. His teammates and coaches liked him for his competitive spirit and leadership qualities, according to the coach, TJ Armstrong. Ethan was his son's best friend and always brought positive energy to the team regardless of how easy or difficult the situation was. Lucas was also a smart kid who wasn't only good in studies, but also loved playing outdoors and often participated in sports with his brother. According to Lucas's friends, he was always full of energy and affection from the outside. Things seemed normal in the Candy family. Everyone thought of them to be a happy family who shared a strong bond with each other and loved staying and having fun together. But not everything you see is always true. And this is exactly what happened on the 22nd of April, 2024. The youngest boy of the Candy family woke up as usual on the morning of April 22, 2024. Expecting to have breakfast with his parents and brothers as usual. The boy couldn't hear what was happening outside his room because the fan was blowing air towards his bed. However, when he went out of his room around 9 a.m., it was a completely different scene, while there was complete silence in the house. The fire alarm rang briefly before going silent. It was unusual for Candy's family, and soon he discovered why. The house floor was full of bloodstains, and his parents and 3 brothers were lying dead in a pool of blood. What was even more shocking was that they had all been shot to death in both panic and trauma. The boy dialed 911 from the phone. He reported to the police that his entire family had been murdered. The police officers and rescue workers could not believe their eyes when they arrived at the scene. Lindsay Candy and her 3 sons, Dylan, Ethan, and Lucas Candy, were all dead. As for the father, Jonathan Candy, he was also found with a gunshot to his head. Initially, the investigators thought that the Candy family had been murdered by an intruder. However, the truth was much more harrowing than that. Soon, it was revealed that the man behind the massacre of the Candy family was none other than the father himself, Jonathan Candy. This was because gun was found near his body. It was a scene that painted a sad story after killing his wife and 3 sons. Jonathan shot himself and took his own life. When the word got out, relatives, friends, and neighbors could not believe that something that harrowing could happen to the Candy family. One of their neighbors, while talking to the media, said that Jonathan was always a happy and kind person, and that they couldn't believe that he killed his own family. Dylan, Ethan, and Lucas's friends were shocked at the news of their sudden deaths. The investigators had some key questions to find answers to after interviewing the people close to the Candy family. Why would Jonathan kill his wife and 3 children? And why would he spare the life of his youngest son? These questions puzzled the investigators even more when they couldn't find any signs of domestic violence or conflicts among the family members. The Candy family had always appeared closely knit to find answers to key questions. The investigators in the case tried digging deeper into the personal lives of each member with special focus on Jonathan Candy, in an attempt to understand what might have been the reason behind such an extreme act. The investigation included a scrutiny of Jonathan's finances, his mental health, and his relationship with his wife and sons. For this, the police needed every possible clue they could get, so they searched the Candy family's home thoroughly with a special focus on the room where the family was found dead. The crime scene was filled with blood, but there was no sign of resistance or struggle from the victims. But it also raised an important question: if other victims didn't struggle, and the youngest son was sleeping in his room completely unaware of the situation, then why did Jonathan Candy spare his life, even though he could have easily killed him as well? While the police were unable to immediately answer this question, it was a key factor to be considered during the investigation. So the investigators began interviewing Jonathan's neighbors, colleagues, and family. When the investigators interviewed Jonathan's co-workers, they all had good things to say about their colleague. He was seen as someone who always created a happy and cheerful environment at work. None of the people at Jonathan's work told the police anything about him facing any emotional or mental crisis. One of his work friends told the police that he was always telling jokes and would try to make people around him feel comfortable. They also said that Jonathan was never angry at work or showed any signs of mental health problems that could lead to something as big as killing his own family and then taking his own life. One of Candy's neighbors, Biram, also remembered him in good words while talking to the media after the incident. According to Biram, Jonathan Candy always tried to help others in whatever capacity he could while remembering a personal moment. Bertram told the media that Jonathan helped him fix his car and lawnmower once, and even fixed ceiling fans for another neighbor. Biram first shared that he was a very good friend of Jonathan Candy and never got even the slightest idea that there was something wrong between Jonathan and Lindsay. He also said that they both flew their drones together and never heard of any incident between him and his wife Lindsay. When the police started interviewing his family and close relatives, they started to see a different side of Jonathan and the Candy family. According to a family close to Lindsay Candy, she had recently opened up to them about the couple having arguments about their finances. None of those relatives expected that those arguments could lead to such a tragedy. But as for the police, it did raise a lot of questions about the exact nature of the relationship between Jonathan and his wife. The investigators now had a lead to follow the Candy family's finances, and when they looked into them, the details discovered made this case even more complicated than before. Jonathan was the only breadwinner of the family, as his wife Lindsay was a housewife who looked after the 4 children, but he was only a part-time worker. As their sons grew, the family's living expenses also increased, and the record showed that the Candy family had several unpaid debts, which were a clear sign that they were facing financial struggles, from medical bills to bank loans and overdue credit card bills. The documents found in the Candy family's house made investigators believe that financial struggle might have been the one major reason why Jonathan took such a radical step. It was hypothesized that Jonathan may have given up on the pressure of providing for his family because he wasn't making enough as a part-time worker. When Jonathan's relatives were interviewed, some of them also shared that he had told them he was dissatisfied with his job and felt he hadn't accomplished anything considerable in his life. He also felt trapped in his role as a father and a husband, but knew that there was no way out of those burdens. The police knew they were going in the right direction, so they dug deeper into the marriage and marital strains between Jonathan and Lindsay Candy. While most of their friends and neighbors knew them as a happy couple, the family members close to the two told investigators that Jonathan and Lindsay had started to frequently argue in the months before the incident happened. Most of these arguments were about finances, and Lindsay had shown her concern about the future. To several family members, the debts were piling up, and Jonathan felt he couldn't control the situation. This led to a major argument between Jonathan and Lindsay. On the night before the tragedy, according to the Rellas, this fight may have taken things over the line to the extent that Jonathan lost control of himself and decided to kill not only his wife but his 3 sons. In light of the interviews with Jonathan and Cindy's relatives, the investigation team was now trying to find answers to a new question. What exactly happened during the final minutes of the arguments that resulted in something as extreme as 5 deaths? While searching Jonathan Candy's workspace, the police found a diary that he had been keeping for months. The content of the diary was disturbing, as it revealed frustrations, abandonment, and disorientation. In one of the entries, Jonathan wrote that he felt he wasn't respected by his wife and was no longer the man his family needed at different points. He had also written about the darkest thought of giving up on everything and had expressed his frustration about his family's future. The contents of Jonathan's diary were a clear sign that Jonathan Candy was facing a serious mental health crisis before the tragic incident. However, he did not mention it to anyone or try to get help. Dr. Joni Johnson, a forensic psychologist, was called by the police to study Jonathan's behavior and thoughts. From what had been found about him through the evidence and the interviews, Dr. Johnston's report revealed that Jonathan may have suffered from severe depression and psychosis, but he kept it all to himself and pretended to be a strong and humorous man who loved having fun and making others laugh. The report also said that depression in men is different from women, as men are less likely to share negative emotions. She wrote that such men hide their pain, which leads to sudden emotional outbursts and lose control over themselves. The psychologist's findings also revealed that Jonathan may have suffered from mental health problems for a long time without asking any of his friends or family for support. As a result of these findings, Jonathan's diary was studied even more closely by the police. Each entry revealed increased negative thoughts of Jonathan about his family life and his role. This made one thing clear: as cheerful and fun-loving as Jonathan was from the outside, he was carrying a massive psychological burden on the inside. The report by forensic psychologists explained that for most men suffering from depression, it is difficult to seek help, as it often shows them as vulnerable. Social expectations add to the pressure, as everyone expects them to be the pillars of their family who can provide for them financially. This makes men feel that they cannot fail. The police also started looking at other factors that might have contributed to Jonathan's condition. These included societal pressure on him to fulfill his role as a father and breadwinner for his family. So why was the youngest son left unharmed by Jonathan? Was it because of last-minute remorse, or did the two share a special bond that Jonathan didn't feel with his wife or his other 3 sons? The investigators are still trying to find the answer to that question, but haven't reached a clear conclusion. A few days after the incident, Ethan's baseball team, Mustang Misfits, arranged a gathering in his memory, in which Rhonda Armstrong, the baseball coach's wife, said that she was in complete disbelief after seeing the news because her son and Ethan were best friends and their family had known the Candy family for 3 years. She shared with the local news channels that the souls of each of the victims always radiated brightness. She also shared that the Candy kids and their parents were always smiling and laughing and always made her forget all her troubles as soon as she saw their smiles. According to Rhonda, they were the kindest, sweetest, best people she had come across in her whole life. Cammie Cruz, Lindsay, Terry Candy's friend, took to Facebook and posted about her memories and friendship with Lindsay. She wrote that it was devastating and unimaginable to hear about the news of one of her closest friends. She further wrote that she had been in tears and didn't know how to process the news because Lindsay was loved by everyone and was special to so many people. Cruz's post said that her friend brought laughter and joy to every conversation she was a part of, and was the light in her mother and father's life since both Rhonda's and Lindsay's sons were on the school's baseball team. This brought them together. Rhonda told the media that Lindsay always treated her son Cooper as her own, and was the kind of person who would give you the shirt off her. Back Dylan Candy was also missed by family and friends after the tragic incident. According to TJ Armstrong, Dylan never missed any of Ethan's baseball games and always made sure that his younger brother was at practice. Becky Young Horton, one of his choir teachers from middle school, wrote in a Facebook post that Dylan was an incredible young man who had a big heart. Brian Stackhouse, Oklahoma Baptist University's director of athletic bands, told the media that Dylan was an extremely talented drummer and was placed on the complex first base as soon as he joined the Bison Brigade, the college's marching band. He further added that Dylan was a delight to work with and was someone who always stayed happy. Even if he was having a rough day, he would still make sure to be friendly to the people around him, and was a great example of working through hard situations, perseverance, and dedicating oneself to something greater. Stackhouse also told the media that Dylan Candy was a very social person and made friends easily. Wherever he went, the Obu's athletic band director said that one of the favorite moments of Dylan's brief stay at the university and with Bison Brigade was when, in August 2023, the drummers were rehearsing their drumline cadence for the first time at band camp, and he didn't know it also included a solo for him. After the tragic incident, the Bison Brigade announced that it would retire Dylan's bass drum in uniform, and a memorial was also planned for the floor where the band department resides on campus. Ethan Candy was in 9th grade at Mustang High and was part of the Mustang youth sports baseball team, which meant the Candy family was always at his practices and games. In a post on social media, the league Ethan played in, Ethan Candy was described by coaches as an amazing kid who could always make one laugh, no matter how tough someone's day had been. Soon after joining the baseball team, Ethan Candy and Cooper Armstrong, TJ Armstrong's son, became best friends, according to the baseball coach. The main reason behind Ethan and Cooper's bond was that they both were funny and always stayed positive. Their teammates called them twins because they never separated and were close to each other. TJ Armstrong called Ethan his sweet little candy man. He told the media that Ethan was a candle who was constantly smiling and laughing and made his son happier. According to the coach, the Mustang youth sports baseball team was working on setting up a memorial bench for Ethan Candy at the Mustang High School. Lucas Candy, who was in 6th grade at Meadowbrook Intermediate School, was the youngest victim of the tragedy. According to family and friends of the Candy family, he was called Luke and was mostly seen playing with younger siblings of other baseball players during Ethan's practice games. TJ Armstrong, while talking to the media about Lucas Candy, shared that he was a happy kid, kind and smart, and was always running up and down the bleachers or playing in the dirt during his brother's games. All that is left of the Candy family is the youngest son of Jonathan and Lindsay. It is difficult to understand the extent of psychological trauma the kid went through and is going to go through, keeping in view his whole life completely changed in a matter of a few hours. The child will need therapy, but he isn't the only one who has been destroyed by the tragic incident in his family. The people close to the Candy family have also been devastated by the incident that has changed the Yukon community for years to come. Brian Stackhouse, Oklahoma Baptist University's director of athletic bands, while talking about Candy, shared a list of resources for his band students and encouraged his students to seek help whenever they need it. In the past, there have been similar cases where one member of the family killed the rest of the members because of mental health problems. They all had one thing in common with Jonathan Candy. They were all facing the crisis of making ends meet for their families, and financial problems were one of the main reasons behind their emotional outbursts. One such case was of John List, who, on November 9, 1971, killed his entire immediate family. He first shot to death his 47-year-old wife Helen and his 84-year-old mother Elma while his kids were at school. Once his younger children, the 16-year-old Patricia and 13-year-old Frederick, came back from school, John List killed them too. He didn't stop there, but rather went to his elder son, John Frederick's soccer game, drove him home after the game, and then shot him as well. When the police investigated the case, it was discovered that the major driver behind List's actions was the financial struggles he faced after getting laid off from his job at the Jersey City Bank. He thought it was too humiliating for him to share the news with his family, so he continued with the same routine of getting up early and going to his job, which he no longer had. As time passed, the List family's financial problems worsened, and at one point he had to divert money from his mother's bank account to avoid default on his mortgage payment. A psychologist appointed by the court testified that when List lost his job, he had two options: either accept welfare for his family or kill them to end everything. And he chose the second option. This was because registering his family for welfare also seemed a humiliating option, the very reason why List killed his family. When the court convicted John Lost to 5 counts of first-degree murder on April 12, 1990, he denied direct responsibility for his actions and told the judge that his mental state made him do what he did. He was sentenced to 5 terms of life imprisonment and even filed an appeal on grounds that he decided to kill his family because his judgment had been impaired by post-traumatic stress disorder. But the court rejected his appeal and upheld his conviction, according to Master Sergeant Gary Knight of the Oklahoma City Police. The police stopped investigating the case further after knowing Jonathan Candy's mental health caused the incident. The tragedy of the Candy family is as harrowing as it can get. It happened because the head of the family, Jonathan Candy, was suffering from depression and serious mental health problems. Jonathan's decision to not share his mental health condition with anyone resulted in the tragic killing of his wife and 3 sons who had their whole lives in front of them and had nothing to do with Jonathan's mental state. It also leaves the youngest son with a trauma that will be hard to forget for a long time to come.